This centurion was, in fact, a God lover, a synagogue ruler, very aware of what was happening in Capernaum. He supervised the construction of the worship space that this community gathered in. He was, in fact, assigned by Imperial Rome to be there, but he demonstrated that it had become his love just as much, if not more, than his government assignment. He heard about Jesus' miracles, and maybe he was even present that particular day in the synagogue when that demon-possessed man walked in, disturbing the worship with his loud cries, crying out because the demons were speaking through him, and Jesus, with a word, told the demon to be silent, and it did. And remember, on that day, Scripture says the people were amazed. But it not only said the people were amazed, it said they were also convinced that Jesus was the one they had been waiting on. They were, in fact, experiencing God among them. Interesting, right, that this centurion would make this trip and this request for a servant. Not his wife, not his children, not relatives, but he makes this trip, makes this request for his servant. And when Jesus hears it, he interprets two things. One, this man needs my power to effectuate change. And two, he assumes he is requesting my physical presence in order to accomplish it. So Jesus responds, I'll come to the house. I'll heal your servant. Come on, lead me to the house. And here is what Jesus praises. The centurion says, I wasn't even thinking about you coming to the house, Jesus, but simply exercising what I already know is your power. I don't need you to come to the house. I want to make this request of you because I just want you to exercise your authority, your ability. If I can mete out instructions from a distance to people through intermediaries and things get done, then I know you can dispense healing with one released word from right here. And I know if you release that word, my servant can be healed back at the house. I know power. I know power because I have it and I operate with it, albeit on a lesser scale. And when I exercise my power, I get things done, guide and direct people. And the trust that I have in your power convicts me that you can simply say a word from here and your power can break my servant's paralysis back at the house. And it's to this that Jesus says, wow. The text says he marveled hearing this come from this man. Jesus was astonished. He was amazed. And he tells us why. He says, I haven't found faith like this in all of Israel. And then he tells this centurion, go on home, make your way home. The healing for your servant will beat you there. Now the question is, what exactly does Jesus praise? Because whatever that virtue is, whatever that expression of faith, whatever evidence of trust and depth of belief, I want to access that from my own life. I want to assess how much of it I might possess, and if I don't have it, how can I get it? If I can access it, how can I grow it? Have I sufficiently nurtured it? Do I even make it a priority in my life? Have I recognized its importance? If I possess it, do I exercise it with faithful stewardship? Have I leaned on its opposite and antithesis more than I should have? How do I ensure that it matures and doesn't weaken or disappear? I know what kind of importance and priority it should have for me and for us. It should be so important to us because it's what caused Jesus to marvel. It was so strong in its spiritual belief that Jesus praised it. He commended it. If he praised it, I ought to prioritize it. I know it was faith because Jesus clearly says he had not found that kind of faith anywhere in Israel. What a bold statement. You mean not one person traveling with him, no one he had encountered, no one he's heard about, no one he has perhaps healed has demonstrated this kind of faith? He knows the thoughts of every person and what resides in the heart of every human being. And Jesus says, in Israel, all of Israel, I have not found this kind of faith that is exemplified and exercised in this one man. What was so unique about it? What set it apart? What made it so distinctive? What has happened to that kind of faith, trust, and belief among us? I guess one of the questions we have to ask ourselves is my faith conditioned so as to need Jesus' invitation to even awaken it, or his encouragement to nurture it, or his push to try it? Or have I matured of faith and anchored it enough, tested it enough, tried it enough that Jesus will commend it when I exercise it? Is my faith rooted enough and leaned on in such a way that Jesus would watch me exercising my faith and go, wow? How you answer that reveals really where you are in life and in what direction perhaps you are headed. Because if you need your faith awakened, it explains so much about what you're facing and how you're handling things. If you're being commended for it, it reminds you to not get weary in your well-doing. I want to make Jesus say, wow, when he watches me exercise my faith. So what is the text teaching? Maybe the text is teaching that you live nurturing a faith that wows Jesus when you never lose your sense of wow about him. Remember, I said maybe the centurion was in church or hears about Jesus silencing that demon-possessed man who walked in disturbing the church service on that day. And the text describes not only how Jesus dealt with the man and the demon possessing him, but the text also describes the amazement of those in attendance and the confirmation it cemented for them. He is what we expected. They were wowed by Jesus' authority, the exercise of his power, the assertion of his leadership. Well, when you live discerning these moments and spaces and encounters where God is doing these jaw-dropping, head-scratching, mind-blowing, amazing things, it just keeps repetitively watering the garden of your soul where the seeds of faith have been rooted and planted. Can I testify? I have been so amazed by God, his direct movements in my own life and in the ways he has moved in the lives of people around me, that my awe of God also grows my faith. I'm trying to tell y'all, I've seen God do some things. I've heard God say some things. I've watched God change some things. I've witnessed God confront some things that left me with my mouth hanging wide open, my eyes wide. I've had to still my steps and square my shoulders. And if you ask me what I saw, what I heard, what I witnessed, all I can say is, wow. I have, for example, been asked by people, let's say on a Thursday, I've been asked by people for help. And before I can call them back on a Friday to tell them that I found a way to assist them, they instead call me and say, never mind, Pass, God made a way last night. Now, that way wasn't even possible 24 hours earlier when I was approached, which explains why I was approached in the first place. I've seen people recently survive things that could have gone another way. But for the power of God, and I'm telling y'all, I've seen it. I'm not telling you what I read. I'm not telling you what I heard. I'm telling you what I've seen. They come up and out of things that just make you think about God. Wow. It teaches that these confirmations of the Lord's presence and power in our lives should be working not just on our witness, but on our faith. Everything you hear God has done ought to not just amaze you, it ought to deepen your faith in him. Watching him work ought to lift you. Make no mistake about it. It ought to inspire you for sure, but it also ought to deepen you and mature your faith until, like this centurion, he in fact says, I don't need signs and wonders. If you just say the word from where you are, my servant will be healed. I don't need no flashing lights. I don't need nobody slinging oil. I don't need any great singing. I don't need folk circling around me. I don't need demonstrative show and extravagant presence. Just say a word, and my servant will be healed back at the house. You've made me marvel about your person and power and purposes that I'm just going to lean on it. I'm going to trust it. Now, that's where I am at this stage of my life. I have a cumulative lifetime of experiences that have cemented my faith. Now, when you ask me, do I know what Jesus can do? I can look you right in your eyes and tell you, I know what Jesus can do. I know what kind of power he possesses. I know how he can make things happen. I know his reach and scope. I know his care and compassion. How do I know? Because I have a lifetime of encounters where he has left me only able to say, wow. And I'm not the only one. I know I'm preaching to an entire crowd who in one symphony of expression, witness, and testimony could also express, I have a lifetime of watching God open doors and make ways. I have a lifetime of watching God flatten mountains and exalt valleys and make enemies back up and stand me up day after day, regulating my mind, keeping the blood running warm in my veins. And when I got lost, he ordered my steps in his word. All I can say is, wow. You know what I can do with my faith that will wow Jesus? I can push the needle of my faith further and further, listen to me, past amazement until I learn to live in a space called belief. Now, I know it seems oxymoronic because I just got finished arguing, attempting to defend that you want to be in a place where your cumulative connection to God leaves you saying, wow. But I want to suggest that Jesus does not wow you for you to only stay stuck in a life that is wowed by him. He wants you to move from amazement to a space called belief. You can call it conviction if you want. Do you know why this centurion could say this to Jesus? You don't have to come to the house. Just say a word, and I already know my servant will be healed. It's because he is a lot further down the road when it comes to his belief.